Let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly, completely bored? Not scrolling, not half watching something, not listening to a podcast while doing the dishes. I mean, genuinely sitting with nothing, no input, no stimulation, just you and your thoughts. If you're struggling to remember, that's actually the point of this video, because something is happening to your brain right now. Not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. I mean, structurally, chemically, physically, the organ inside your skull is being reshaped by the world you live in, and most of us have no idea it's happening. Today, we're going to talk about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, and why the modern environment is essentially running an unsupervised experiment on every one of us. Segment 1, the brain is not a fixed object. For most of human history, scientists believed that the adult brain was essentially set in stone. You were born with a certain number of neurons. You lost some as you aged, and that was that. The architecture was fixed. That all changed in the 1990s, yeah. What neuroscientists now call the decade of the brain. Researchers discovered that the brain is profoundly plastic. Not plastic like a toy, plastic like clay. It reshapes itself in response to experience. Every thought you repeat, every habit you form, every environment you spend time in, all of it literally changes which neural pathways get stronger and which ones fade away. Neuroscientist Michael Merzenich, one of the pioneers of this field, described it this way: the brain is always changing, and the question is never whether it's changing. The question is how and in what direction. Here's the key principle. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you repeatedly engage in a behavior, when checking your phone, doom scrolling, skipping from task to task, those neural circuits become more efficient, more automatic, more you. This is incredibly good news when we're talking about learning a language or building a meditation practice. It's more complicated when the thing repeatedly activating your neural circuits is a notification sound. Segment 2. What modern life is actually doing. So what exactly is the modern environment doing to the brain? Let's be specific. The attention system. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain right behind your forehead, is responsible for sustained focus, decision-making, and what researchers call top-down attention control. It's the part of you that can say, I'm going to sit with this hard thing and not look away. Here's the problem. The digital environment is almost perfectly engineered to hijack what neuroscientists call bottom-up attention, the reflexive automatic kind. The ping, the flash, the unpredictable scroll that might have something amazing just below the fold. Every time your bottom-up attention system gets hijacked, your top-down attention system gets slightly weaker. Not dramatically, you won't notice it in a day. But over months and years of this pattern, researchers like Dr. Gloria Mark at UC Irvine have documented that the average time people spend on a single task before switching has dropped from about 2.5 minutes in 2004 to around 47 seconds today. 47 seconds. That's not laziness. That's not a character flaw. That's a brain that has been trained through thousands of repetitions to expect novelty and to feel uncomfortable when it doesn't arrive. The dopamine loop. Then there's what happens at the neurochemical level. Dopamine is often called the pleasure chemical, but that's not quite right. Neuroscientist Kent Berridge at the University of Michigan has spent decades showing that dopamine is actually about wanting, not liking. It's the anticipation of reward, not the reward itself. Social media platforms, and most digital products, are dopamine delivery systems. But here's what makes them unusually powerful. They work on what's called a variable reward schedule. You don't get a like every time. You don't get a funny post every scroll. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That unpredictability is not a bug. It is the product. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so hard to walk away from. Over time, this trains the brain to crave stimulation at a level that ordinary life simply cannot provide. Sitting with a book feels slow. A conversation without your phone feels incomplete. Your own thoughts, in silence, feel almost threatening. Segment 3, the hidden costs. Now here's where it gets really interesting and a little sobering. The default mode network. When your brain is not focused on an external task, it doesn't go offline. It activates a completely different system called the default mode network, or DMN. This is the neural circuitry of daydreaming, self-reflection, empathy, creativity, and what psychologists call autobiographical processing. The ongoing story you tell yourself about who you are and what your life means. Dr. Marcus Rachel at Washington University, who first identified the DMN, found that it is remarkably metabolically active. The brain at rest isn't resting. It's doing some of its most important work. But here's the catch. The DMN activates during unstructured downtime. It needs boredom. It needs silence. It needs the space that opens up when you're not consuming something. When we fill every quiet moment with content, in the car, in the elevator, in the 30 seconds waiting for coffee, we are systematically starving the default mode network. And the research is showing us the downstream effects. Lower creativity, reduced empathy, weaker sense of personal identity, and a strange paradox where the more content we consume, the less meaning we seem to extract from our lives. Chronic stress and the amygdala. There's also the stress piece. The amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. It evolved to respond to immediate physical dangers. A predator, a storm, a rival. It's designed for short bursts of activation, followed by resolution. The modern information environment provides something the amygdala was never designed to process: continuous, low-grade threat input. The news cycle. The social comparison of social media. The ambient anxiety of a world where you can be reached at any moment. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between a real physical threat and a disturbing headline. It fires either way. When it fires repeatedly, it grows, literally. Research by Dr. Sarah Lazar at Harvard showed that chronic stress is associated with increased amygdala volume and decreased prefrontal cortex thickness. In other words, more fear response, less rational thinking. This is not destiny, but it is a pattern we need to understand. Segment 4. The brain can rewire. Back here is what I don't want this video to be. Another piece of content that makes you feel bad about modern life without giving you something real. Because the same neuroplasticity that makes the brain vulnerable to these patterns also makes it capable of extraordinary recovery. Attention training. The research on meditation is now robust enough that even the most skeptical neuroscientists take it seriously. Studies from Dr. Richard Davidson's lab at the University of Wisconsin showed that even 8 weeks of mindfulness practice produces measurable structural changes in the prefrontal cortex. Thicker gray matter, stronger connectivity to the regions involved in emotional regulation. But you don't have to meditate if that's not your thing. Any practice that requires sustained voluntary attention, reading long-form books, playing an instrument, drawing, learning a craft, exercises the same prefrontal networks. The currency isn't the specific activity. It's the deliberate, voluntary choice to stay with something, even when your brain is screaming for novelty. Boredom as medicine 1, of the most counterintuitive findings in recent cognitive science. Boredom is neurologically productive. When researchers at the University of Central Lancashire, including Dr. Sandy Mann, gave participants a boring task before a creative challenge, their creative output was significantly higher than those who did something stimulating beforehand. The default mode network, allowed to roam, had been doing invisible work. This suggests something radical. The single most brain-healthy thing many of us could do isn't adding a new habit. It's removing an old one. Specifically, reclaiming a few minutes each day where you do nothing on purpose and resist the urge to fill it. Sleep and memory consolidation. And we can't talk about brain rewiring without talking about sleep. Matthew Walker, neuroscientist and author of Why We Sleep, has documented how the brain uses deep sleep to consolidate memories, clear metabolic waste through the lymphatic system, and essentially reorganize the neural architecture built during the day. Blue light exposure. Late night scrolling and the low-level arousal of a notification-heavy evening all compromise this process. The brain you wake up with is partly determined by how you wind down. Segment 5, a framework, not a fix. I want to be honest with you about something. There is no hack here. There is no one supplement, no single app, no 5-day challenge that reverses years of neurological conditioning. Anyone selling you that is selling you comfort, not truth. What there is a framework. 3 principles from the neuroscience that are actually actionable. 1, protect your thresholds. Your brain adapts to whatever you expose it to most. If the baseline of your day is high stimulation, then everything below that threshold will feel unsatisfying. Deliberately building in low stimulation periods, walks without headphones, meals without screens, commutes in silence, isn't deprivation, it's recalibration. 2, make attention a practice, not an accident. Attention is a trainable capacity, not a fixed trait. Every time you choose to stay with something difficult, a hard paragraph, an uncomfortable feeling, a slow conversation, you are literally strengthening the neural infrastructure of self-direction. 3, respect the rest states. Your brain does not need to be entertained every waking moment. The default mode network is not empty space waiting to be filled. It is where you integrate experience, develop empathy, generate meaning, and maintain a coherent sense of self. Guard it. The philosopher Marshall McLuhan said, 50 years before the smartphone existed, we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. He was more right than he knew. Modern life is not malicious. The people who built these technologies were not trying to damage your prefrontal cortex, but the brain doesn't care about intent, it responds to input. And right now, the input most of us are giving it, hour after hour, is optimized for engagement rather than flourishing. The good news is this: you are not a passive recipient of that input. You are a participant. And the brain you have 5 years from now will be, in a measurable structural chemical sense, a reflection of the choices you start making today. So the question isn't whether your brain is being rewired. It is. The only question is, by what? If this made you think, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on any of the research I mentioned, the default mode network, neuroplasticity, the dopamine system, I've linked sources in the description. Don't forget subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications.